You're in line for one more fine time.
In our brand new era, furries have taken over the airwaves. Fine time has become furry time. Brr, 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 brr. It's Vin. You may know me as Dre's curmudgeon in crime, and today I'm once again joined by Ampy. What is good, buddy?
Hey, glad to be back on here for a little more Pokemon action.
My furry in crime, FIC, the counterpart to curmudgeon in crime, kick CIC. But yeah, we've already Pokemon gone to the polls, so now it's time for us to Pokemon sleep, because clearly that is the longest running and most renowned Pokemon spin-off. Actually, I kind of wonder how long Pokemon Sleep is going to last for. Do you have a clue?
I mean, it seems to be off to a start. They seem to have it geared that it's going to last for a while because it takes forever to do anything.
It takes so long. It takes forever. I've gotten so many dupes when I pull stuff. After every night, I just see the same like Pokemon a lot of the time. But I guess it makes it more interesting when you actually pull something different, I guess. But
guess so, but I don't know. I'm tired of seeing the giant fields of Bonsly and Igglybuff or whatever.
Yeah, right? That's true. Oh my goodness gracious. But yeah, Pokemon Go, the worldwide phenomenon, everybody knows about this game. I think that's fair to say. And that is no exaggeration. Even now, more than 7 years later, people are still playing it like us. We're super, super into it. So we felt it was a good idea to kind of like reflect upon what drives us to keep going with this game. It clearly has something going for it if it's still up after 7 years, right? And 7 years is a really, really long time. So far as games go, that's to put things into some general perspective. That's the length from the PS3 to the PS4, even like the PS4 to the PS5 in terms of release dates, right?
Yeah, it's weird to think it's been going this long, especially because other mobile things like this, they've kind of had their rise and fall. We've seen a bunch of other series come and go in that time, but no, 7 years and still going strong as far as we see.
Yeah. It's crazy, actually. Yeah, the vast majority of mobile games could only dream of doing this, right? Even from, like, the Nintendo sphere, not to name names or anything like that, right? But we're going to get into some questions, some big questions, and what better way to start off with, what got you interested in this game at first?
Well, I actually just started up right on launch day, and I still have that Bulbasaur I caught my very first day. But at the time, I just kind of thought, oh, this looks like it'll be kind of neat, but I don't think it'll actually last or anything. And yeah, I mean, people said that about the original Pokemon games, and look where we are now. But yeah, there was just that first rush right at the start when, like, oh my God, there's a Dragonite over here, or there's an Aerodactyl, and everybody was getting into this. I had folks that had never even touched Pokemon were like, I want to be in on this. Even like relatives were getting interested in. So it was really intense.
That's the funny thing. I feel sometimes you see older players just sort of walking around. It's interesting that it actually reached that demographic, right? I think that's really, really cool. And I think for like, especially like younger kids, they probably think of this as like among their first games, right? So it's like, that's kind of wild to think about.
Yeah, it's covered like a really wide range of folks. I've met folks that are, in their 50s and play in this game regularly. And then I've seen, little kids doing that as well. So getting that kind of reach, you don't really see that too often. It's really something.
You really don't, and that ties into the whole phenomenon part, right? But meanwhile, I was playing the whole contrarian angle in that while you've been playing this game since 2016, I actually did not play the game for 2 years. I actually refused to touch it for the first 2 years because I thought it was kind of frivolous. I was like, why would I want to do this on my phone when I have Pokemon elsewhere? And I had a friend who visited San Francisco in 2017, and he was all like, oh, there's so many stops here. And I'm just like, okay, that's nice, guy. That's nice. And upon launch, it also sort of felt like it spammed the original 151 Pokemon, which I wasn't really like the biggest fan of necessarily, because like Pokemon X and Y kind of spam a lot of like throwbacks, so I was already kind of soured on that. And so I just didn't necessarily like feel like it. But it was really around the time when they added friend codes and gifting in June 2018 when I was like, yo, dog, I'm not going to miss out on this. So one could say I got suckered in via the power of bonds, I guess. Which I guess is as good a reason as any.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's one thing I think we can get into a bit later, but that's part of what's kept things going for just since the start and keeping interest going. In fact, that's kind of what we want to get to next. Like, what has kept us going throughout all this? What's our drive after 7 years that keeps us coming back?
I think the reason why we play this game nonstop is that for three main reasons. In that one, there's a perpetual sense of discovery. So like when you're walking around, you're always going to see like different stops. So it's fun to see what is actually like a Pokestop or a gym, right? It kind of gives you an excuse to walk around just for that reason. And connecting with people, kind of like what we said. Like I have friends that don't really play video games too much elsewhere, and so like I'm still able to like send gifts to people that I haven't necessarily spoken to in like a long time, and that's pretty cool. And the third reason, really, for me personally, it keeps a low mental stack. So like it's not like the biggest mental investment to keep playing the game. So like it's just so easy to play, right? And I think that's really big in terms of sticking with it. Do you have any other particular reasons?
I mean, the thing about connections I really like about it, you'll see it at conventions and such. They'll have a Pokemon Go panel or a chance to meet up with other folks and change friend codes and all of that stuff. Like the friend codes, I think, really did keep things going and inject a little extra life, and part of what keep it going for me, too. And other thing to note is, like, I'm in agreement. It got me moving around a bit more. It's fine to just flip it on a little bit while I'm taking a walk and get a little more excuse to move around. It was really good for that at the time and still now. And yeah, the fact that it's pretty low maintenance outside of, say, your big event days where everything's happening for a few hours, it makes it easier to just, okay, I'm just going to pop in, do a couple daily things, and that's it.
That's the important thing to me, because the dailies are not that involved, because sometimes dailies can get a little wild. Like in Street Fighter 6, it's like sometimes they'll be like, well, you can play a match on a battle hub, but then other dailies will be like, win 3 matches in the battle hub. And I'm like, I don't know if I can do this against randos. They're just gonna pummel me. These dailies are just like, well, you really just have to like do a few things, right? So it's not really that bad. It's just, yeah, I think it really helps when the game is just that accessible, right? And in terms of accessibility, there's a bit of a question I have in that some players might not necessarily see this as much of a game. So, like, would you say that this is like would we say that this is like a real game, quote unquote? To which I think the answer I would say is like the short answer is no, but the long answer is yes, right? Because so far as that goes, you're just catching stuff, and it's sort of like a light quote-unquote gambling simulator, right? Because you're trying to see whether you get like those perfect stat Pokemon, or those shinies, which is like a reason why some people are like, yo, check out my shinies, or like whatever, right? And it's like, okay, that's nice, that's cool. But in terms of yes, I think for those who want to dig into the game, there's some main game paths. Notably, you can complete the Pokédex much like in any other Pokemon game, right? Or you can build like your player level, which has like tasks unto itself, which sometimes they'll ask you like do specific things. There's a bunch of examples of PvE and PvP, and some of these PvP matches have been incredibly intense, like even more intense than what I've seen like other like 1v1 games. And but in general speaking, yeah, like even though like there's not too much of like a quote unquote fail state, unless you like pay for a raid pass and you don't do the raid. It's just like yeah, I think there's always a pursuit of like rare loot, which is at the core of like many games, and that's embedded in Pokemon Go.
Yeah, one thing I like to think about is we've got all those multiple paths even before, Scarlet and Violet made it a main selling point of their games. But there's all these different things you can do. You can go after raids, you can do the Pokedex, do some battles. There's a lot open to you. And if you want to mostly ignore one part of that, the game doesn't particularly punish you for it. Or if you just want to focus on one thing over the others, some people want to go and try to get to the maximum level too. So there's plenty of things to explore there. like, yeah, there is going to be a little bit of that gambling element. If you want to get that one perfect catch on Community Day or get that perfect legendary that's going to be really good for all this other stuff. But for the most part, it's not the end of the world if you don't get it absolutely perfect. And there's always going to be the charm of, finding your favorites, or, ooh, there's an Espeon in the wild here, yippee! Or, just trying to get the best mons you can find. And for the most part, it's a good parallel to the main games when it comes to that sort of stuff.
I don't see Shaman in the wild. What's up with that? Huh?
They better fix that. Next update, here we go.
That'd be amazing, oh my god!
Shaman everywhere.
That'd be incredible. But yeah, it is really interesting to think that you can go on your own treasure hunt before Scarlet Violet did that. And speaking of things that some players gloss over, what is your take on the game's PvP? Is it actually interesting to you?
So I only did it really regularly the first couple years, but honestly feel it's a pretty solid formula. It's a nice little twist on how the mechanics usually go. Like you got your fast moves that you can throw out right away, and then charge moves you build up for a big ol' attack. Then you've got things like shields to try and defend against a move. You've got all these mechanics that are a little different from the main game, but still play on the same kind of idea of those battles.
Yeah,
it's
I
cool.
agree.
There's also these different leagues that are neat. So some Pokemon that would normally never be that great in the main games end up being really good in these. Like Sableye and Tropius have never been superstars, like Tropius in particular. But then, hey, it turns out they're really good. And then occasionally you get something like Toxapex and Azumarill that they're good in the main games and they're good here too. Just in different ways.
Yeah, Altaria, I guess, too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I one of my favorite examples of that is the gimmick leagues that really handicap the level. So they're sort of like the counterpart to the Little Cups from Pokemon Stadium. And one example that always sticks out to mind is Ducklet is actually really strong in some of these just because of their move pool. I guess it's really funny. Who would have ever thought about Ducklet? But they're super solid. But yeah, they rotate out these cups, so it gets you thinking about what you've got. I'm glad you mentioned shields because I think there's a lot of mind games so far as Winda shields, and I sort of think of this as a miniaturized version of a collectible card game or a miniaturized version of the mainline battles because you kind of build loadouts and you're trying to see what might they roll in their loadout, and there's a bit of a timing element. There's some people that think the PvP is just about mashing the screen over and over and over again, but it's controlled mashing, right? You have to make sure that you're using your moves at the right time, that you're not just shielding everything, and you're just trying to get a leg up on them by timing your charge moves at the right time. And I think that's pretty cool. It's accessible. You don't have to put too much thought into it. You don't build your IVs and your natures and your EVs and your abilities and your hold items. And there's something else I could probably be going off about, but but yeah, it's cool. I think I don't do it too often because it gets a little hardcore for me, but I like to do it in bursts. I'd say every so often, I'll give it a shot. So I mean, it's fun.
Yeah, one of the only things that does get me is that some of the moves are very different. So it's actually important to have moves like Counter and Charm and Razor Leaf in Pogo, whereas in the main games, those aren't always things you'll see. So sometimes it'll be a legendary Pokemon actually isn't as good as it could be because it doesn't learn this really normally weak move. Because, all the legendaries get all the powerful stuff in the main games, right? Mm-hmm. Zaniness is one example. For the longest time, it didn't have any fairy-type moves at all because it never learned any of the ones like that in the main games. And then it got Geomancy, and that's all good, but still, it could be held back, or there's others that could be held back in different ways.
It's very contingent upon what Niantic decides to include for the move pool, I guess, in some way. So, you kind of... It's a little weird sometimes in that respect, but we make the best of it. And there is one thing that we don't generally ignore mechanically, and that is the gyms. I'm sure we all love gyms. You can't ignore them. They're giant towers and spires on the world map, and they're nice and colorful with Pokemon that flash on the screen. And I heard back in the day your Pokemon nicknames would show up in public, which sounds like a catastrophic idea. And but I guess they already had changed. They got rid of that by the time I started playing. So but I think it's pretty fun defending gyms. It's really hard to do in some areas, especially in like urban areas that have like a lot of players. In San Francisco, if I try to take a gym, it gets taken back like in a matter of minutes. So that's kind of a bit of a downer. But I like to just deposit stuff in like random out of the way areas and see how long they stick around for, right? And I think that's pretty fun.
Yeah, so gyms were really different early on. I've got nightmares of the days where there are just massive Blissey stacks in every gym when you could have repeats. And before they rebalanced Blissey, that thing was just impossible to take down. And getting coins in the game is one thing that can be a little bit of a mixed bag. The way it works is, okay, every 10 minutes your Pokemon's in the gym, you get a coin. But you can only earn the coins that they get when they're knocked out, and you can only get up to 50 coins a day across all your Pokemon.
Right.
So we already talked about, big urban areas, you're lucky if they last for even 10 minutes, whereas if you're too remote, you could have something in there for weeks, and you don't get any coins from that. Because you don't get them until they're knocked out.
I love I can see the durations. Like, this thing's been here for 23 days. It's like, am I ever going to leave? Is anyone going to deliver me from this gym? It's like, what's going on? You're just like, yeah, so that balance is really funny, right? And when you mentioned the Blissey stacks, I was thinking about how, like, the first few months of Overwatch let you stack heroes. So people would run, like multiple, like, 3 Torbjorns and, like, 3 Bastions, and you couldn't, like, get in. It was, like, really annoying. They fixed it so you can't stack heroes, but that was really funny. The stacking life in 2016 was serious business, as it were. Speaking of remote areas, there's a mechanic that's like slightly harder to do, and by slightly I mean probably very hard to do if you're in a remote area, and that is the raiding mechanic, which is gets you all the cool Pokemon. But it's kind of sticky, huh? Isn't it?
It is. Like, at their best, are these great collective efforts. You join up with a few folks nearby, and you get a shot at some rare and powerful new allies. But at their worst, they're just impossible to do if you can't get the support. Now, remote raids did help with this, because you can get some buddies that aren't there in person to help, but they're still really tricky to coordinate the timing. And honestly, anything beyond like 3-star raids, and even some 3-star ones, you need either just massive investment and the weather working in your favor, or you just plain can't do them. Too bad.
If it's a legendary Pokemon, you basically can't do it by yourself in like most cases. Like, at best, you could do it with like one other person, but it's like, you better be tricked out. You better be like super level boosted and stuff like that, or you're not doing those super high level ones. And it's particularly thorny in some ways because they've kind of upped the ante in some regards, so that you have like these super like high level mega Pokemon raids, and like, if you're not in an urban area, or if you're not like coordinating with people, it's like really tough. But it definitely epitomizes the feeling of haves versus have-nots, which kind of sucks. But do you have any other favorite things to do in the game?
Well, funny enough, but like, as far as favorite mechanics go, actually getting those raids in for the first time was a real game changer. Like, at the time, there wasn't really a whole lot outside of just collecting things, but then suddenly you've got a reason to hook up with other people, start sharing those friend codes. Mm-hmm. But beyond raids, one of my favorite new things was getting the postcards introduced, because you get a lot of real-world exploration going on, and now if you're walking around town or you're traveling somewhere else, you can keep a little postcards as souvenirs, or send some really fun ones to your friends, and stuff like that. It's just a great little travel catalog of sorts in game.
Yeah, and building off of what you said, actually one of my favorite things is like the stickers, which probably sounds kind of crazy to like people that don't play, but I really like these stickers they added a few years ago, in that it actually gives an opportunity to see new art for Pokemon that you might not expect. Like Grubbin of all Pokemon has all these cool little poses. Poliwag stickers are like really elaborate. They're practically in like a pond full of like water lilies, and these just got more and more elaborate over time. And the funny thing is that you can actually kind of pair them, right? So I've kept some of yours that say like 16th Street Pride with like a rainbow circle, the Garden of Gratitude with Shaman, because definitely not a raging Shaman fanboy, and I've kept like gazillion postcards with like cat stickers, whether they're like from cat cafes or just like statues and the like, right? And this actually also ties into another one of my favorite things to do, which is Villain, which is a butterfly Pokemon whose form depends on like the actual geographical region of these postcards, right? So like in like the old school days, like it was based on like your 3DS region, which sounds like a lifetime ago, right? And whatchamacallit, but now that if you save postcards like from like across the pond from Australia, it'll give you like the Australian themed Pokemon, right? So it's like that's pretty cool. And another thing that sticks out to me is a Mega Evolution. Speaking of X and Y life, I didn't typically care too much for it in the past. Like I thought it was like a nice gimmick, but it actually plays into like the bonuses you get while catching stuff, so it feels a little more like holistic. Right. Granted, it kind of shipped in a weird state, so they had to change it. But once they did, it felt really good.
Yeah, it needed a little bit of adjustment here and there, but now that they've fixed a couple things, made it easier to get energy and so forth, it's definitely a lot of fun to play around with, and just a nice way to get a little boost to your team.
Yeah, you better have damn well done those raids earlier, though. Oh my god. It's like, I hope you have friends as crazy as you are who want Mega Energy, but they changed it, so it wasn't quite as arduous.
Fine time.
There's so many Pokemon. There's over 1,000 of them. There's so many of them. And are we satisfied with some of the ways that some of these have been included in the game?
So I've found they've been pretty creative about including some Pokemon, especially the ones that normally have an ability that reins them in a little bit. So how do you work with that if there's no abilities like the main games?
Right.
Well, like Slacking's whole thing is super powerful, only attacks every other turn. So they give it a useless fast move, and it has to only use charge moves.
Yeah, that's right.
You've got Archeops without the whole defeat a stat drop when its HP gets low. Well, it just gets absolute trash moves, period. So it's not super broken rock type or anything. And then you got Regigigas without slow start. Well, it just gets limited fast move options and reined in that way. A lot of times it's just, okay, the movesets kind of get tooled around it if there's no abilities there. But some get a little tougher, like Shedinja really got left behind without any kind of Wonder Guard. It's just got all the 1 HP, none of the immunity, so too bad.
You know what we call those Pokemon in this game? We call them Dex Filler. That might be slightly rude, but it's kind of true.
Oh, it's true. There's some Pokemon out there that they're just not going to be that good in a fight. That doesn't mean we don't love them. They're still our friends, but they're just probably keep them on the bench for now. That's all.
Every single Pokemon's a friend. I've had this theory that like every single Pokemon has like a fan somewhere out there in the world. Perhaps even a Chirogranol. Wait, who said that? Nobody said that. Nobody said that. We like snowflakes here. So playing back into the whole Shaman fanboyism, I really like form changes. I think being able to freely switch between sky and land forms is pretty cool. Also with so far as Furfro, the elegant long-furred dog Pokemon, you can change it to form if you just spend some resources. And the gimmick is that some of those form changes are geographical. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Good luck finding some of those regions, though. Yeah, that one's a little weird. It's just that the thing is that it's kind of inconsistent because like Giratina is like the form changer, and they can't do it. They can't do it. You have to catch one form, you have to catch the other form. It's like, wait, what? I'm mostly satisfied with the ways legendaries have been included, though it feels like a bit of a weird, funky marketing gimmick to be like, here's a raid boss, and then here's their raid boss, and then they wait like a year, and like, here's the raid boss with the move later, and it's like, wait, what? You could have done this to start with? It's like a little ham-fisted. It's like, oh, now you can catch it with this one. And it's like, okay, thanks, I guess. And I think my favorite example is actually Kecleon, everyone's favorite chameleon. So their ability doesn't apply. So they have Kecleon blend into Pokestops, like literally on screen. I think that's pretty ingenious, honestly. Whether you'll find them easily, is another question. But I think that's actually an ingenious way of doing it.
Yeah, also, people were wondering, when is Kecleon finally going to be in the game? But hey, they finally delivered in a pretty cool way.
You just have to imagine like years of working on the whiteboard. I think this game kind of looks a little straightforward. It looks pretty simple. It's basically an overglard GPS. Do you think that's like enough? Because I feel like on a sheer fidelity level, it is kind of Spartan, but I guess it's kind of like a necessary thing of needing to build this to run on as many phones as possible. Do you think it really needs to be spruced up in any way?
I mean, for the most part, I'd say, yeah, it has depended on phone hardware in the past, so you kind of needed to be at a certain point or it would really just run badly. But, I mean, it's not going to turn heads, I'd say. It generally runs fine. Like, the models are good for what they are. You've got even some fun character designs. We'll get into some of that later. Mm-hmm. And yeah, and also once we got the faster frame rate option, that actually helped things a bit too.
Oh baby, I love me when I could unlock that frame rate to 60 frames. Oh my goodness gracious. Maybe I might not have a battery afterwards, because when I totally play outside with the phone cranks up the brightness with like the 60 frames, maybe I'll be lucky to get like 2 hours, but don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's all good. Oh my goodness. We have some other big questions regarding how this game stands out from its other mobile game brethren, and that is, how recommendable do you think this game is to just anybody? Because I think, to be entirely honest, it's kind of a hard sell unless you live in a city or next to a park with a lot of stops. And again, like, it can be a hard sell to finish the Pokédex if you can't raid, right? So it's like, do you think like you would just recommend this to just anybody?
Well, honestly, at this point especially, in its lifetime, I'd be a little hard-pressed to recommend it, especially if you really are in it to catch them all. Because sometimes you've got these limited events, and it could be hard to fill in those gaps after the fact if you weren't there from the start. And it is easier to get caught up as far as levels go and unblocking stuff there, but it can be tough to get to a point where you can actually compete with others in the PvP battles, or feel like you're really contributing in those raid events that happen too.
Yeah, it's a precarious balance, right? But you're telling me you're not flying across the pond to go catch like you're not gonna fly over to France and catch Klefki? Come on, man. Let's go. You gotta get them all, man. You gotta get them all. You gotta show me your keys. There's another thing that mobile games do, which is basically giving old faces some fancy costumes. And this game is no exception. Do you have any favorites?
Well, probably my favorite was the Slowpoke and the Slowbro getting the 2020 and 2021 glasses. That was just a stroke of genius because it just becomes more relevant as time goes on. And aside from that, it was also really fun seeing the Pokemon... the first Pokemon movie designs for the original starters, where they got all those extra little details from the Mewtwo Strikes Back movie. So that was a lot of fun. Also, I'm continually impressed just how many Pikachu costumes they've come up with over the past few years. They just keep on coming.
And there's a separate event dex in the game, and like I swear, like maybe like a third of it is like Pikachu. The reason the GoFest 2023 event had like 4 different crowns of Pikachu, which is like crazy. But I mean, I like chasing those, but it was a lot, I guess. And speaking of the movie in question, I actually like how Armored Mewtwo was like a separate like entity, and they actually like different stats, though it's technically like a costume in some ways, right? So it's like I thought that was pretty cool. I have a soft spot for a Cowboy Snorlax. It's like, oh, like the Go Fest in Seattle debuted this cowboy, and I was like, I mean, it looks so goofy, and I was just like, it's pretty cool in its own way, I guess. And yeah, there's just so many throwbacks, like Pikachu does get like Shaman themed things and like Meloetta themed things, so like I think that's pretty cool. But being a mobile game, we have to ask the necessary question, which is to say, is this a predatory experience?
Yeah, it has been a little bit more noticeable as time goes on because, the numbers need to keep on rolling to keep things profitable. The good thing is you can technically do a lot of things without actually spending money. You get a daily raid pass, you've got this single infinite incubator for hatching eggs.
Mm-hmm.
But during the limited events, you definitely get a little bit of that FOMO pressure going on, especially if you're just in an area that's way too sparse, so you never get knocked out of the gyms, or too dense, you get knocked out in 5 minutes, and getting the coins to actually get stuff through that can be a little bit difficult as a result.
Yeah.
There's community tickets, community day tickets that started appearing, and you get a few nice goodies for $1, which is pretty reasonable by in-game store standards, but there are some more exclusive event tickets out there that got some higher prices and leave a little bit of a bad taste in comparison.
I was asking you so many questions regarding whether you're doing GoFest Global 2023 because the $15 dues basically unlock the ability to catch Diancie, whom I'm in love with Diancie, but I don't think you want to do the $15 dues for that, right?
Yeah, like it's cool what they do for some of the events, but just I've been like a little bit less eager to jump into some of that as time goes on. That's all.
Right, and like I'm willing to do it if there's like other things alongside with it. But there's some things that are like a little more scummy, and the epitome of that to me was like when Galarian Mr. Mime debuted in the game, they were locked behind this $8 ticket, and I'm like, why in the world would I want to do like this much for like a not even like a mythical? They're just like there's a form, man. So we all waited till Galarian Mr. Mime came out like more widely, and that's how we got it. Like in some cases, all you have to do is just like wait and they'll like eventually come out. And like on that sort of thought, Keldeo, like the mythical horse Pokemon, they also were like blocked behind one of these tickets, and that one's it gets a little dubious, right? So I mean, in that regard, it's borderline predatory, but if you want to catch them all, that is, if you want to fill out your decks, right?
Yeah, but if you just want to have a little bit of fun, catch a few faves and stuff, you could do all that for free if you play your cards right. So it is ultimately what you make of it. But I'm not going to pretend there aren't opportunities there for things to be a little bit bad too. Yeah,
I definitely agree. Do you think there's anything that makes this particularly interesting compared to other Pokemon games? Because for me personally, I think it's really fascinating how it just focuses the game on just catching them. And nowadays Pokemon games focus fire so they don't quite have like the whole roster, but this makes it relatively easy in general to have a roster spanning like the whole history of the franchise, which is pretty cool.
That's something that's really notable because just about every other game out there, there's usually some kind of compromise. Maybe not as much for the earlier games, but later on, it's just that is a lot of Pokemon to fit into your game in some way. But what's neat is also they've done some unusual twists with the usual formula, like what we've talked about with raids and battles. It's all just different enough to be, intriguing, yet similar enough to not be too much of a learning curve if you're a fan of Pokemon and you kind of want to get into this. Mm-hmm. And it's not quite the same as some other Pokemon games out there where, they take Pokemon and put it in another genre. Get a puzzle game, get a roguelike game. Mm-hmm. I mean, those are cool and all, but this is kind of doing its own sort of thing that's built off the original games, and it's pretty neat.
I think so too. Yeah, it encapsulates the spirit of like the original games while still like kind of feeling fresh and like unto itself. I think that's pretty fascinating, right? How does Pokemon Go feel differently compared to other mobile games that you've tried in the past?
Well, one issue that's often a thing in these games is dealing with power creep. I mean, it happens in the main Pokemon games.
Mm-hmm.
New generation comes out, you get these new super powerful legendaries, and now suddenly all the old ones are kind of obsolete.
Yeah.
But they've been surprisingly good about keeping the power levels pretty even. So even if you've got some new Pokemon that are better stat-wise, maybe they won't have as good moves, or maybe they'll get those moves over time, so the ones you put all your time and your love and effort into just aren't totally obsolete.
Mm-hmm.
There are a couple cases where you really need to have those limited time movesets to make them really strong, like Metagross is probably the worst one. If you don't have Meteor Mash, you're probably not using it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but it's not nearly on the level of some other mobile games out there in most of the cases, I'd say.
I would say so too, and there are certain games out there that really have literal power levels on screen, and this game doesn't really have that as much. Though of course you still need to like be packing quite a bit of firepower to be clearing these raids, but there isn't as much of like a demand on your time to like empower your teams, and like you don't have to do like the shenanigans as much, as it were, right? And so I think in that regards, it sort of deals with the power creep a little better in a way that I don't personally mind as much. So yeah, that's cool. Regarding sticking with us, what memories have really stood out for us? And I think for me personally, one of the funniest things that during one of the waves of legendary raids, I heard someone down the streets of San Francisco yell "Shiny Hundo" out loud, which is like a pretty rare. It's like a 1 out of 4,000 chance or something like that, so it's pretty rare. But yeah, I thought that was just hysterical personally. I think it was during a Mudkip community day when I was playing one of the big hotspots in Northern California, and supposedly there were rumblings of like a perfect stat spawn somewhere around us, and so there's a giant wave of people just like moving in one direction. And I thought that was like really, really, really funny. But unfortunately, my friend and I were too late, so we didn't get the hundo, as they call them. But yeah, what kind of sticks out to you? Like,
I used to be over in Arizona, and we'd have these big old group gatherings that were a lot of fun. Like we'd just have a whole string of gyms, and we'd go through them just one by one, hit up a handful of the gyms, and there'd be some great moments that came from that. Like one thing was, back when Kyogre was first introduced, we were going through a whole bunch of those again. The very last one before the event ended, I was down to my last ball, just hoping for a miracle, and I got that miracle because I got a critical capture with my last chance.
oh my god.
So just a couple clutch moments like that have happened. The occasional, legendary hundo or, shiny hundo, that's just something else entirely.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, but also just a couple of the Pokemon Go Fest days were great because we had a local group going on where they'd set up a snack stall and give out some refreshments to those who were playing there. So it was really cool to see in the community that formed around going around catching some fun little critters in person.
Wait a second, we don't have snack stalls here in San Francisco for Pogo? What? Oh my god, come on, man. I've been missing out. Oh my gosh. I'll have to travel some more, I guess. See what is going on.
Fine time.
But like, actually, it's fun meeting up with people in that I sometimes wear my Pokemon Go shirts And at a recent convention, I happened to have my Pokemon Go Fest shirt on, and somebody actually approached us, like saying, like, "Oh, like, do you play the game?" And we like had exchanged our friend code information, and that was a lot of fun. We just met up with each other that way, just because I happened to have the shirt on. So I thought that was pretty cool. It wasn't like a Pokemon Go event, and we just happened to be standing around, and someone approached us, so that was pretty cool.
So on that note, one thing to think about, do you have any favorite memories from the Go Tour and the different Go Fest events that are out there?
I really enjoy these events. I'm a sucker for environment art and props. So GoFest 22 in Seattle had literal biomes. They had like these clouds full of like bubble machines, and I think it was cotton candy outside. Or I'm sorry, I think it was like cotton outside to like look like clouds and stuff like that. So they had like they put in the whole like work into making things look cool. And so that really stood out to me. And then. But regarding other things though, Go Tour 2023 in Vegas, the connectivity is kind of busted the first day. So they actually gave us several extra hours of bonuses afterwards as a bit of an apology. So I was just kind of catching like boosted things throughout the city. So I'm not really sure if that stands out as like a favorite so much as like a kind of a big memory, so to speak, but there was that. But yeah, have you done any of the other events?
Well, General, I never did go to any of the Go Tour stuff in person, but just the Go Fests in general were a really fun kind of atmosphere. I already talked about the whole snack and drink cart setup thing that we had going on, but just people going around calling out raids and yelling about, "Oh, I got a shiny," or anything along those lines. It was just a really good time. And even without going to any of the tour events, there's a lot of good moments just from the Go Fest, especially when we had a lot more people playing in the area.
Yeah, I think it's cool because basically the game rotated to letting players worldwide participate in like some of these Go Fests as well, so that's pretty cool. So it used to be you had to like literally fly out to like, you know, St. Louis or whatever, and if you couldn't fly out across country or just like you couldn't do it. So it is really good that they've opened it up since.
Definitely.
Yeah. Kind of tying things back, do you have any favorite Pokestop names? Just the things that you kind of see out in the field.
Oh yeah, there's people get really creative with some of the names and things that pop up, and you get a lot of really cool regional ones sometimes too. Like one time when I was at the Chicago airport, there was actually a Blues Brothers stop. But unfortunately, this was before postcards existed, so I couldn't actually save that. So all I've got are my memories and make a little picture on my phone. But there's others, like there's an end of Route 66 stop on the Santa Monica Pier as well. And it also turns out that the San Francisco Zoo has a welcoming cougar stop that I like for obvious reasons.
Nice. That's great.
But it's great getting those touches like we talked about earlier. If you get a nice sticker that goes with the stop. Like I'll add grass-type Pokemon for the garden stops. I'll have the whole dazed, groggy Pikachu for the many, many Starbucks stops out there, and other fun things like that.
I definitely have to say that, yeah, whenever you do like a tired Pikachu on top of like a coffee stop, I always chuckle. I think it's really funny. Yeah, I really do appreciate that. Some players don't really put the extra like thought, and that's fine, but I think it just gives a bit more character. And speaking of Pokestop names, the most memorable to me was the Nob Hill Theater in San Francisco, which borderline seems kind of a little weird for like a Pokemon game. The description said "touch our junk," so I always thought like, wait, is the Pokemon company really going to be fine with this if they had known about it? But no, this is here for years. So like, I just kept sending it to everyone. It's like, hey, by the way, greetings from the Nob Hill Theater. So that was the thing I kept doing, but they got rid of it finally. Like in the middle of 2023, they got rid of it. So even though the Nob Hill Theater itself has been closed for years, they actually took a while to get rid of this Pokestop. So I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's so sad.
Aww.
Yeah, it's kind of sad. one of them is also a black magic woman, which kind of seems a little I don't know, it's a little bit of an interesting mural name to put it bluntly. Anything with rainbows I really like gravitating towards. And some of the Go Fests also have really some of the on-site Go Fests also have some pretty fun biome Pokestop names. Seattle had Electric Garden, Cloud Sanctuary. Vegas had a Verdant Earth because it was all like Groudon and Kyogre themed and stuff like that, right? They also had like a Spinda spot 1 of 8, which makes like 0 sense to anyone who wasn't there.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm sure like when I sent it to you, you're like,
It's like, what? I don't know what this is all about.
And another one more is that I like the anime and cartoons mural, which is basically definitely not a bootleg Pokemon.
Oh, heavens no.
Yeah, may or may not be sanctioned by the Pokemon Company, but yeah, there's just a lot out there. I think it's all really, really fun. And I don't think people typically play Pokemon Go for the characters, but do any stand out to you? Because I really like some of the art. Kozaki-san, who also does art for Fire Emblem and iSomnium Files, I think they did a really killer job designing the team leaders and Professor Willow. And I really like I really like Willow since he's like such a doofus.
Yep.
I'm on Team Instinct, but I do think Blanche is an elegant, cool design, and it's fascinating that they go by non-binary pronouns. I think that's in the English script. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, just as I'm actually on Mystic here, and I'm definitely a fan of Blanche's whole cool, collected, non-binary nature going on. I also dig Ree's whole cyberpunk vibes going. You've got like an actual character from another dimension going on, when usually it was just, oh, the Ultra Beasts are coming. But they've honestly come up with some really cool original characters just across the board. We've got all the others, like the other team leaders. You've got the Team Go Rocket leaders too, and it's a pretty fun collection overall.
They are the OCs don't steal of this universe, as it were. And I actually, yeah, I like the 3 rival Team Rocket leaders. They have really goofy dialogue. They're like, Team Rocket saved me, it's time to do the same. And I'm like, okay, that's nice, buddy, that's nice, that's cool. And someone else is all like, it's a good thing you get to fight me. It's like, I guess. I mean, I feel like I've won previously, but sure, okay, whatever you say.
It's good to have just some really arrogant chumps you can take down a peg, and they do a good job with that.
It makes you feel good when you do it, right? Exactly. Yeah, it's so funny. Another thing we can't really escape is the Rona in 2020, which changed everything. And the whole premise of this game is going outside, but in the Rona era, like in the Rona year of 2020, we couldn't really leave our places. So how did we respond to this game?
Well, the one thing they did that was really nice was they started introducing double distance, and that was just a real lifesaver. At the start when that was happening, I pretty much didn't leave my room except going out for groceries every now and again, and just reaching a little bit farther put a few more things in range and made it a little easier to just keep those daily things going. And it was just a general improvement across the board, being able to reach a little farther. And like, it was pretty much just nothing but positive across the board. But it was still really difficult keeping up even with that while that was going on. It's all about getting out and meeting people and everything. And you can't do that during a pandemic.
Yeah, like there's a period of time where they gave some bonuses so that you could play at home. So like it kind of softened the blow for a bit. But for that first month in March 2020 during lockdown, I straight up couldn't play the game because I was like surrounded by stops, but I was like just out of range of those stops. So I was just like, I'm not really going to be walking outside because the sidewalks near my apartment are super narrow, so I don't really want to be wandering around like too much. That was like way before we got vaccinated and stuff like that, right? So when they doubled the distance in April 2020, I was able to like actually play the game, like be within range of stops to be able to get resources and catch stuff. And but yeah, like I was still playing the game. It sort of felt awkward, I think, in the grand scheme of things. But for what it was worth, it was still fun. But yeah, it's what a time, right? What a time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, is there any point at which you were actually like considering like not playing the game?
Well, a few of the missteps we're going to be getting to in a sec, those did get pretty frustrating, but it didn't really push me to quit. It was just more, maybe I'm not going to drop that dollar for the community day tickets.
Yeah, me too.
But I was like, yeah, maybe not that, but I'm probably not going to outright quit. Like, for all the nitpicks I've had of taking forever for a new set of Pokemon to come out, and some little glitches here and there, but the core concept has been pretty engaging.
Fine time.
But speaking of glitches, it's time to go and talk about the blunders. There have been some interesting moments in the game when things did really not work as they were supposed to. So the next thing I want to get into is, what were some of your favorite glitches that came up? Because, oh boy, there's plenty of them.
That was a recurring thing that I always chuckled at, because the game would let you actually play it without necessarily having like the absolute latest app version. But if the game like actually needed to know some text strings that didn't exist, it would just throw placeholder text at you, like event underscore something something. Or if the task didn't exist, it would just be like special underscore something something underscore something, which felt really haphazard to me, because I didn't know like why that was happening. It was just kind of bizarre. So I would like send these screenshots to Dre, and he would just be like completely dumbfounded about what he was looking at, like every single time. And yeah, like I'm sure you saw some text strings of your own too.
Oh, well, that's bad enough when it's just, the tasks or event notifications. But back when Unova was introduced, I think it was September 2019, actual Pokemon names would just accidentally be text strings. You'd see something that'd be Pokemon underscore name underscore 04 or something. It was really weird. I think I still have a couple. I still have a couple that have those like names or the equivalent of them in there. That they did get automatically fixed a couple days later, but for a brief moment, that was the only way to break the 12-character limit for the names. So you just have things rolling into ellipses in your Pokemon menu.
Oh, that's amazing! Oh my god, I haven't kept any of those though. I think you kept some other glitchy names too, though, right?
Oh, there was some fun things you could do way back at the start. People found out you can actually use HTML tags in the Pokemon nicknames. So you can you could put the names in bold and italics. Like, you'd have very little left to work with after the opening and closing tags. But it was a fun thing that sadly you can't do anymore. But I still have like an Omanite named Helix in all italics back from launch month. So it's still there. It's just you can't do it anymore, unfortunately.
That's incredible. Oh my goodness gracious. Wow. I think occasionally I've seen some news posts have like weird like formatting tags too, but that takes the cake, man. That's like amazing. My favorite that isn't quite as crazy as those is that sometimes the game lets you run it in landscape mode, which is seemingly unintentional because you can't consistently do it. But my favorite part of it is that it actually breaks the user interface, because you're not the assets aren't really intended for something like that. So like the boxes will just like not fill like the screen. And I think it's really cool seeing the map in landscape, but I still to this day don't really know how this is like allowed. It just kind of happens. If I just like tilt my phone and like everything tilts over, and it's just like, okay. So if you catch something, like the boxes just get super jank. It's like so funny.
Yeah, there's some weird camera stuff that happens. Like sometimes it would occasionally get so the camera was fixed and your character would just, go off into the great wild yonder and, yep, just leaving you behind. Okay.
That guy was going to the polls, man. And speaking of other blunders, from more of a PR angle, sometimes it feels like Niantic has made some snap judgments on short notice. And is there anything in particular that's kind of really stung?
Well, the running gag or theme is just that a lot of times they'll be super quick to fix the stuff that actually helps folks, and then the things people ask for will take a lot longer. And like I know that part of the development cycle, it's difficult to get some of that stuff implemented, but there will be times when they make a decision that's like, oh, I really don't like that. Like, for instance, one of the big things was we actually had the double distance removed for a brief moment.
Yeah, we did.
Because, yeah, I remember, wasn't there something about your experience there too?
Yeah, so like we had double distance for like about like a year and then some months, but so it was part of the COVID era bonuses. But then for whatever reason, like Niantic saw like let's revert the distance back so that people could play in person. And it's like, you know, that was shortly after we got vaccinated. This again, this would have been July 2021 when they removed it. So like we had still like the Delta variant stuff going around, right? So it's just like scary stuff. And so like it took about a month, but they finally like pulled it back. And it's just like, is that really such a good idea to remove it in the first place? So now the double distance is like permanent, it's just built into the game.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's just, ooh.
Like, I'm glad they reversed it, but for a time there, it was just, oh, no, why would you do that? Like, it was good for everyone. People benefited even without the COVID restrictions, just, you know, being able to reach stuff you couldn't before, or helping accessibility. Like, It was a really bad idea. But again, thankfully, they reversed it.
But Ampy, don't you meet people at Pokestops outside? Don't you meet people out there?
Oh, all the time, you know, just walking around residential areas. There's just, there's not a lot of people out there.
They're just like NPCs just standing around, right? And just giving Pokestop. And when you have to get really up and close to that Pokestop, that's how you meet people, right? dot. Oh, man, so funny. Oh my goodness gracious. It kind of sort of building off of that is like the biggest sort of PR blunder, which is like the big old nerf to like remote raids, right? Because remote raids were this mechanic added during the Rona that lets you basically invite people from afar, so you don't have to literally be on the raid gym to like do the thing. But like at the end of March, like Niantic like gave us little notice. Like they basically said the prices would essentially double, and that you couldn't like you had a hard limit on the amount of remotes you could do each day. So we're just like, they didn't give us much time. Is this really such a good idea? And so like, I don't know. How did you feel about this? It felt kind of weird to me.
Yeah, because I really enjoyed doing the remote raids. There was a time when you would get a free remote raid pass every week as sort of your weekly bonus. So that was cool. It was a way to keep up with friends in different towns and such. But then, yeah, before it used to be like 3 passes for 300 coins in game, and now it's, I think, what is it, 525 now instead? It's a big boost.
Yeah, because like it's tough to really quantify this, but like essentially at its base level, it's almost $2 a remote raid pass a la carte, and like I mean, hopefully nobody's actually doing that, but like I'm sure like it's just, oh my god, it's rough. I understand what they were going for, but I don't necessarily agree with how they did it, right? Because they're like, oh, we don't want to promote like quote unquote like unhealthy behaviors, because presumably people were spamming raids to like from afar to like they're probably spending like, I don't know, dozens of remote raid passes to try to get like shinies or like whatever. And like, so I understand what they're going for, but it's just like, I think like the double whammy of price hikes plus like the number is just like, it kind of feels a little ham-fisted to me, right? And, you know, it's rough.
Yeah, and also they started putting in raids that you have to do in person, so you can't even use a remote raid if you want to. So, like some of the Shadow Legendary raids that are happening now, you can't do those unless you've got people physically there in person, no matter how many passes you got. And again, that needs a lot of people. It's it's tough to make it happen. I get they're pushing it, but some people, you're just not going to get a chance to do that.
Yeah, it's tough. I remember like some of the legendaries like Reggie Drago and Reggie Alecki, like they took a lot of firepower, so like if you weren't like in person, they weren't exactly doable. So you kind of need a lot of people. Fortunately, they kind of made those more available, but I guess those elite raids, the elite part is the fact they're able to get out there and go.
Yeah, it's really tough without, even with them pushing all that. It's just, it'd be really nice to have more options. It feels like they've taken away more options than they've given over the years.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but we still got COVID around, so you got to be a little careful in some ways. I mean, people like to pretend it's over, but I'm always cautious. And yeah, it's just unfortunately the game is kind of like sort of shifted away from COVID bonuses. So yeah, it's definitely an awkward situation. This is a bit of a lesser blunder, but they rolled out this routes mechanic, which I guess parallels the mainline game's routes. Like, so basically you're walking on a designated path and you're making spawns happen around you as you do so. But the way it was rolled out was really messy. I don't think a lot of us were able to use this feature at launch because for like 2 weeks, like we didn't really have any around us, so we couldn't do it.
Yeah, it was rough because only very few people could actually make the routes at first. And then, even if they did, good luck having it be anywhere near you. Like, even in places that were a bit more population dense, you still have to go out of your way to even have a chance at finding them.
Yeah, I think that rollout was not the most transparent because like we had to like rely on like a group chat to know like routes are available to like so and so level, and like I would never have known that if it weren't for like the other guys digging deep into this. So to me, I'm just like, I can't make them, I can't use them. I don't know why I should do them, but it's largely it took about like maybe a month and a half, but I mean they're largely like doable now, but it's just one of those things like, well, here's a spiffy new mechanic, and it's like, well, so long, suckers, we can't actually do it. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely gotten better. I actually got a route approved of my own, and I'm using it regularly. And
nice.
You get some neat spawns there sometimes that I think they end up being regional in nature. Like you see stuff like Tauros and Seviper pop up, and they'll have a little icon that says that they're on the routes. I just started noticing that recently, but I'm thinking it might differ by region, which would be pretty cool.
Oh, wow, yeah. I haven't tried making it myself, but yeah, that sounds pretty cool, actually. Yeah, I need to figure out a cool name and make some routes, I think.
Oh, they let you get creative with that and all the descriptions, so you can definitely have some fun with that.
I gotta find the path where the cats are at. Actually, I don't even know where that is. So
just come to the route I made. We got cats.
Oh, I guess I'm headed right over. We have some questions regarding sort of what we'd like to see in the future. I mean, we're not soothsayers, we're not clairvoyant, but we all have sort of desires that we have since we've sunk like so much time into this. Of course, so naturally we'll think about what could be done. And I guess is there anything you wish was like added to this game?
Well, little things here and there, not so much big additions, but little tweaks and fixes are the main things I either would hope for or want. One thing that happens is the Team Rocket can show up at these stops, and they're there for half an hour, but you don't know how close they are to disappearing. I've had a lot of times where I walk up to a stop ready to fight, and then the moment I click on it, poof, they vanished. So you're out of luck.
That's the Team Rocket part. They're there to troll you. Team Rocket's blasting off again.
Yep, it's true to form.
That's blasting off. Yeah. Sorry. I was just about to say, there are Team Rocket balloons that they introduce, and sometimes those balloons will literally just like fly off straight.
Yeah, just whoosh, and away they go.
It's like, why would you just fly vertically out into space? It makes no sense.
Man, I don't know what kind of tech they got in those things, but that's impressive.
Yeah, right? It's like spacefaring rocket balloons. Man, they could use that in like the mainline games. My God.
And any things that you'd like to see?
I think like the big thing for me is kind of a more granular activity status. It'd be kind of nice to like set status messages or something of the sort, because like I get a lot of people like trying to introduce me to like raids, but I'm just like, yo dog, like I don't want to pay for remotes, so like I've actually had to resort to like leaving myself as displaying offline so I don't like bamboozle people, and like that kind of sucks, right? That's not a pleasant feeling. So like that would be really cool. Maybe some like looking for raid status, I don't know, something, right? But so far as the game goes, it's just like, oh, this person has caught this, oh, this person has caught this 1 day ago, oh, this person's caught this 2+ days ago. Did you ever think like 2+ was kind of like a weird cutoff point? Because I thought that was weird.
Yeah, like you could go like a little bit higher, maybe to double digits if we're feeling adventurous.
Yeah,
just anything like maybe over 1 week would be a decent cutoff point. But yeah, I don't know who's actually been playing the game or who's been offline since like 2018 or something.
but you know what that means though? If you haven't like logged in 2 days, that means you're slacking.
They're calling you out.
2 days ago, that's like sucker login counts, right? But yeah, I understand that's probably hard. Status updates are probably hard to implement. I just think that's kind of the big thing to me, because like it feels kind of awkward as is, but it's like kind of a nitpick. Speaking of other nitpicks, the game has like infographics on like the social media accounts and stuff like that, so they'll actually say like, oh, look at this like list of things that's coming up in coming months. And do I really need to go onto social media to like see this? Because I feel like it could be in the game itself, right? It's like like the game has countdowns for like the current event, but it doesn't really say anything that's like in the future. So it's like I almost have to like switch out of the game to like look at the stuff up, and that just feels archaic to me. But I mean, again, that's kind of a bit of a nitpick.
Oh, one more thing too. I really wish they'd update the gym raid recommendation system, because like they got a little bit better, but a lot of times they'll just put up stuff that's meant to last a long time rather than something that's actually going to do some damage. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've seen Aggron pop up for any like, normal type. It's like, buddy, I get it, you like Aggron, but I need to punch things. Aggron cannot do that kind of damage.
It's oftentimes like a recurring joke for me personally whenever I saw like other people using Aggron, which basically is a telltale sign that they probably just use the auto recommended teams rather than picking their team members. It's just a total call out. It's like someone at Niantic loves Aggron, but like I'm just like, I'm never going to be using this Pokemon. Maybe someone in the world actually likes Aggron. So this game so Pokemon Go has a thing for sort of capitalizing off of the ongoing game. So like there was a Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl crossover with like special hats and stuff like that. And the game also introduced elements from Scarlet and Violet. So you could catch all of those starters. Now the really weird part is that the Sword and Shield starters weren't really introduced before that. So like, did you think that was like kind of bizarre, like, or does it not really matter that much?
I mean, it would have been kind of nice. I mean, they felt like they had a thing going where it's just after so many months we get the next set of starters up. It would have been nice for them to do that a little bit sooner, where they're keeping pace with the biggest releases. But I guess I feel like they didn't want to rush it too much.
Yeah, I think so too.
But as far as getting the current gen ones in, I mean, I think that's cool. Like, it would be nice if we had a little more Galar, because it's kind of been ignored in favor of some of the new things coming out. But, I mean, I guess we'll get to that in time.
The way I often put it is that the anime has caught up to the manga.
Yeah, that's basically what's happening.
Oh, my goodness gracious. So, where do you see this game going forward? Like, do you have any sort of do you think they're going to like do anything different to sort of shake things up?
Well, it's hard to say, because I mean, are they going to have any really big new features or shakeups? I figure PvP is going to keep on evolving. They'll get some new releases. They'll rebalance the moves and movesets. And for the raids, we'll get, a mix of the rotating legacy raids, and we'll get some new releases here. There's one thing I'm curious about is how they'll work in some of the other mechanics we've seen. Because we had mega evolutions introduced. There's still other things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I'm curious, would they ever do any kind of Dynamaxing things or terrestrialization? It's hard to say if they'd work that in, but there's certainly areas they could explore if they wanted to.
I want Z moves. Where are my Z moves at?
Jeez, look at me, skipping right over that. Yeah, Z moves. Where are those? I want to do those. What were a couple of those?
Oh yeah,
the extreme Eevee boost or Evo boost. Yeah,
extreme Evo boost. Wasn't like Mimikyu's like let's snuggle to forever or something like that? I'm just like, ooh, okay, that's cool, but I'm not really entirely sure they're gonna put that into the game. I mean, that'd be fun, but I want to see Dynamax and Gigantamaxes, man. I think that'd be dope, but I don't really know how that's gonna pan out. It's kind of hard to say. So, I think they're just gonna have really interesting gimmicks that we can't really see. Notably, when they introduced like the sort of catch card mechanic, which basically shows like fancy backgrounds for things that you catch like at specific locations. There's no way in the world we ever could have foreseen that. And I guess like I think there's just gonna be some quality of life stuff that we're not really expecting. Like for instance, like they reorganized the way like the style, like the clothing shop looks. And so I kind of sort of wonder if they're gonna introduce some more sorting options along those lines. I think it's gonna be largely iterative from what we've like currently seen. I can't imagine the game's gonna be big shifts after all this time, but I imagine it's gonna be like little surprises here and there. I think is about what we can expect.
Seems reasonable. Yeah.
And to sort of cap things off, do you think you're gonna find yourself sticking with this game forevermore?
Well, for the longest time, my goal was the big old let's get to level 50. And for the first time in 7 years, it's actually within striking distance. But then again, I was about to reach level 40, and then suddenly they added 10 more levels. So no word yet if that's going to happen for me right before I reach 50, but, after that, it's hard to say. It'll depend on what they do, but even if I don't do the whole daily login dance, then I'd probably still jump in for some community days. It's still something fun to have while walking around and just doing something a little bit different. So, we'll see where things go, but so far I'm fine just including it a little bit now and then, even once I reach that goal.
Can you imagine what it'd feel like if they raise it again? Oh my goodness gracious. It takes so long to get through these levels, man. It takes forever.
It's easier, but God, that was such a huge jump. I was so mad.
This is like, you thought you're hot stuff. It's like, well, we'll show you.
Yeah, now get 10 times that amount of experience.
It's Have so fun. Much experience, so much. Realistically speaking, I think so far, as long as I live near Pokestops and gyms, I'll keep playing it. If I don't live in the city anymore, then if I literally don't have stops around me, I can see myself not really logging in that much. But so far as like, there's stuff to spin and stuff to win, then I will keep playing the game. So I can imagine nothing's going to stop us from being on this train. The train that is Pokemon Go. Going to the polls, going to the market, going to the subway station, wherever it may be, I would imagine we'll be forevermore going forth into the unknown. Though it does kind of beg the question as to how long this game's going to last.
Well, it's gotten this far. Figure as long as it keeps on being a thing, I imagine we'll see it for a while longer. We've seen games come and go, but, this one's had some staying power. Pokemon tends to do that, I guess.
So long as the servers don't get too expensive, right?
Good point.
Well, the game's got staying power, but yeah, it's a fun experience. It's not necessarily for everybody, but I would say that Pokemon Go, it definitely has a special place in our hearts, for better or for worse.
Oh yeah, I'd say if you know other people that play, that's probably the biggest indicator if you want to get into it at this point, because there's still fun stuff to do. But yeah, it's good to have those moments where you're getting together with some buddies and doing something a little fun that you can get into even if you don't have too much experience with Pokemon as a whole.
And we too could send you some fancy presents from funny locations. I think that's enough from us. Thanks for listening. Ampy, thanks for joining. Thanks for going on this adventure on the airwaves. Hopefully it's been a fun time looking back.
Oh yeah, always fun to talk Pokemon with you. Thanks again for having me on.
Absolutely. You can find our contact info in the podcast description. You can also follow the podcast over at Fine Time Podcast. We'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.
Catch you later.
We'll see you next time on Fine Time.